I'm Tracy Rigdon, and this is the Contrast Project Lounge podcast. Often random, always relevant, always real, and practically nothing is off limits. Are you ready for this? Let's do it. Welcome back to the program, guys, and thank you so much for joining us. You know, this is a bonus episode. As you all know, if you've been following us, we've already finished up season 6. Season 7 will be starting in January at some point, probably mid-January. Don't have a date yet, but if you haven't already, go ahead and like, share, comment, and smash that subscribe button. Today, joining us is Denise Elysa. She's lived through years of pain, dismissal, some profound transformation. Her journey through chronic illness and somatic healing is truly powerful. It's honest and it's deeply human. Denise, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tracy, for having me here.
So you're in Canada.
I am.
Yeah. Folks, for those of you that follow me, you know I'm in Jacksonville, Florida, and actually I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I'm out in the woods there, Denise, and she's in Canada, so here we are at 2 a.m. And, you know, before we started, I did apologize to her. Well, you know, I had to. Little inside there. Listen, Denise, let's start with a little background. You know, your journey, as I was reading in your bio, 23-year-old fitness coach, you know, from that to nearly being bedridden. It really is a harrowing story. It really is. What was the first moment you realized something was deeply wrong, and how did the medical system respond to it?
Yeah, I mean, that's going back like 12 years or so now. And I guess my first signs that something was really wrong and not improving was that I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't recovering from my exercises, like my workouts. So I was used to working out 7 days a week, guiding others through doing the same. I had 3 businesses at the time. I was a full-time hairstylist, so I was on my feet all day, 10 hours a day in the salon. I did my fitness coaching in the morning, and then I was also on the admin and executive board for a business association here locally where I live. And I just was not recovering from my workouts in the way that I should have been, or in the way that I was used to. And as I was trying to force myself to work out and to continue doing what I was doing, because that's the narrative, right? Is you have to move your body. And if you are feeling like you're too tired, like you have to do it anyways, because that's how you get stronger. And I was up against a lot of those narratives at that time. And I just found that every workout I did, I was getting weaker and weaker, and I wasn't recovering. And then I was having like days of needing to just spend hours and hours in bed. So I would go to work, I'd come home, and I would completely crash. So that was my first sign.
Right. And when you realized it and you started to seek help in the medical community, how did they respond to you?
Not well by any
Yeah.
means.
Yeah,
I
I
was
feel
told,
like crap. Tell me what's wrong. And I know. I hear you.
yeah, I mean, I was starting to lose neurological function.
Hmm.
And I just kept being told that it was all in my head. It was psychosomatic. It was didn't exist. It was anxiety. It was depression. It was PTSD. And
Well,
nobody would treat me.
I'm a retired ICU nurse, and I hear you talking. And also, and I know you're probably going to be very aware of this, that many times male doctors, you just listed off the most popular diagnosis
Yeah.
that they give women. You've
Yeah.
got anxiety, you've got, depression, it's, any number of things. They blame it on everything.
Yeah. And I
Instead of,
actually had a history of pretty severe depression and anxiety, which I now recognize was actually really severe burnout and other misdiagnoses. However, at that time, I wasn't aware of it. So while my doctor was telling me this is depression, this is anxiety, I was like, I know what depression and anxiety feel like, and this is not it.
yeah, yeah. Now, I see listed here fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
You have been diagnosed as having that?
Yeah, I've been diagnosed as having Lyme disease in the in the complex chronic stage, along with
Mm-hmm.
several co-infections, myalgic encephalomyelitis, mast cell
Mm-hmm.
activation syndrome, fibromyalgia, hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, POTS, and several other pain conditions, endometriosis. Yeah, the list is really long. Central sensitivity syndrome. It's a really
Woo!
long list.
Where's my medical book?
Yeah,
Yeah, you got them. You got them.
exactly.
But that one struck me as one that I know. My ex-wife had several issues that just went undiagnosed for years and years and years, and fibromyalgia finally popped up on the spectrum, and she was after many years of going through the pain and everything, and she was finally found a doctor that would listen to her. Happened to be a female doctor, by the way.
Yeah, I think the average is that most women go through something like 7 years, and I can't remember the number of specialists, but it's like 10 or more that they normally go through before actually receiving any kind of effective diagnosis or treatment.
So going through all of this and going through the like basically you were living inside the cross section of trauma, neurodivergence, chronic disease, motherhood. How do these layers interact inside the nervous system, as far as your understanding?
Oh, that's like, how much time do you have? That's a big question. So there's a lot of layers there. Feel free to just stop me if I go off on like too long of a tangent, because that's a lot of intersecting layers. But when you are raised in like a chaotic environment or just an ungrounded environment or with undiagnosed neurodivergence, there's a lot of different factors that can come into play here.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, your base survival needs for connection and love and support and being seen and held as the person that you are is often not met because there's a lot of compounding factors there, right? And then we start to move through the world in the way that our survival brain thinks is going to help us to survive. So we start responding to situations as how we think we are supposed to respond instead of how we actually truly are or feel in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And you can look at that as like people pleasing, but there's many different ways to look at it. Ultimately, it comes down to a maladaptive survival mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
And that really starts to like disrupt and distort your nervous system because now you're not acting from the place of who you truly are and what your true needs are. You're acting from this place of survival. So from there, you can see how that starts to develop through childhood and adolescent in this maladaptive survival pattern. By the time you're in your 20s, often you don't even know who you are at your core at that point anymore, right? So then if you bring in like interoception and neuroception, like interoception is how you respond to your body's cues, how you sense your internal body cues. So you can look at this as like pain or sensations in the body or something as simple as being thirsty or hungry or having to use the bathroom. That's your interoception. And we are taught from a very young age through what I was just referencing to ignore a lot of those cues. Right? So now we're disconnecting from our interoception. We don't even know what our internal body needs. And then when you bring in the neuroception piece, that's our external antennae. So that's our body's way of cueing safety in our environment and in other people. And we cue safety to what we perceived as safe as a child. So if what we perceived as safety as a child was not actually true safety, that's what we continue to perceive as safety into our adult years if we haven't done the work to reprogram that and to create those new neural pathways. And so from there, you can see how we're bringing in a lot of different layers to where that would be disrupting the nervous system. and how we respond both to ourselves and to
Hmm.
the world around us. And eventually your body goes like, hey, you're not listening to me. And the more we ignore that, because we have never been taught to trust those cues, we've never been taught to listen to those cues, we've actually been taught the exact opposite, we end up fighting against our own basic needs over and over again. And ultimately, we often end up creating an entire life that fights against those core basic needs and not even
Makes sense.
understanding who we are as a
Right.
person.
Right.
So, all of these different layers start to contribute to various illnesses and diseases. They really pull us out of connection with ourselves. And I'm sure you can kind of see where the rest goes.
Yeah, sure. Earlier, we had gone back and forth, about some other things, but you had mentioned somatic inquiry
Yep,
and your energy work. And you had mentioned that basically it changed your life. Now,
I did. Yeah.
for someone listening who's skeptical or simply unfamiliar with it, and to be honest with you, I'm unfamiliar with it. What does that work actually look like session to session?
Sure. Well, first of all, I was skeptical. I didn't really believe in I was really connected to this work as a child, but it's one of those things that I shut down really early. I
Hmm.
was taught that energy healing and energy work wasn't really like a real thing. It was a scam, all of that. So when I got to the point in my early 20s where I was so sick and no doctor would help me and I had nowhere else to turn, eventually I did turn to a local energy healer, which kind of started me on this path. So the reason I share that is to say, like, if you're a skeptic, that's cool. Like, don't worry about it. Most of us are. And I think it's healthy to be skeptical because different energy healers have a different level of integrity and training and safety within the work that they provide. So even as an energy healer myself, I still carry quite a, I would say, a high level of healthy skepticism around accessing these types of services from other people. So I would
Yeah,
never tell someone to like deny that skepticism within themselves, right? But how this looks within like session to session is we would begin by getting kind of a baseline of where are you at in connection with your body at this
uh-huh.
time? And that's where we're bringing in, I merge energy healing and somatic inquiry. So, somatic inquiry is more of a body based practice where it's a little bit like talk therapy, except our access point is through the body instead of through the mind. So we're working on those
Hmm.
more physiological layers. And then the energy healing piece, of course, comes in through that more like your auric field, your energy body, your connection to source, your connection to energetic grounding to the earth, and how all of that intersects within your physical body. So I'm blending those modalities along with some other intuitive based and past life regression type modalities to bring in. So the way that I would go through a session is going to look different than the way that another energy healer is going to go through a session,
Sure.
right? For myself, I like to work with people longer term to bring them actual tangible and sustainable
Sure.
change that is
Sure.
showing up both in their physical body and in their external lives. So we're going to explore at first, like, what is your connection to your body? Do you have an access to any felt sense of safety in your body whatsoever? Where is your starting point? Right? Where is your connection to the earth? Do you feel connected to the ground beneath you? Like even just the floor, your chair, your environment, right? When you are sitting in your chair, do you feel held by your chair or do you feel the weight of your body in your chair? Or do you feel like you're floating? Right? So there's a
Sure.
few different layers we're going to bring in the beginning. And all of that is around like resourcing and the connection to the body and the connection to a felt sense of safety, which I find a lot of people don't have. Right? So once we've developed that, then from there, we're going to branch out in a few different directions depending on the goals and the needs of that guest. So we can start to look at connection to intuition, connection to source energy, their own daily practices for like even just getting through the day, right?
Sure.
Some people, that's where we
Sure.
have to start. How are you going to get through the day to day in a way that feels sort of okay to you? Right? So
Hmm.
for some people, that's our starting point. For other people, we're going to dive a lot deeper into maybe pain in the body, sensations, energy blockages, emotional repression. I really like somatic parts work. I don't know if you're familiar with like internal family systems. It's not exactly that, but that's my best reference point to give
Okay.
an
Hmm.
example. But somatic parts work is where we look at all of the parts of ourselves as coming together in a whole and how each of these parts of ourselves plays a role that is trying to help us, trying to support us, but the way that it plays that role might be maladaptive. So it might be something that developed even like pre-verbally before we could even speak, right? In
Sure.
early childhood. And so some of those parts might come out and kind of disrupt our lives. They could, cause us to shut down. They could cause us to push people away. They could cause us to overspend or overwork or, you know, overcommit to different things or people
Sure.
or become really enmeshed, right? So for the people who are ready to go there, we're going to go a lot deeper into those parts. And the idea is that by the end of working with me, people are more equipped to do this for themselves. So one of my big hicks in this world is like that guru culture, that idea that the person who's coming to see the guide will always
Right.
need the guide, that the guide is always above them, that they are never going to be able to do this alone, right? And the difference for the way that I view this is that the person with the absolute highest authority and highest knowing of their body and their system is the person in front of me, right?
Sure.
So my goal is that yeah, I want my guests to always like want me, right? Like to always want to be connected with me and to be able to receive ongoing support as things
Sure.
come up that they need. But I don't want them to always need me or to
Right.
feel reliant on me to be able to connect with themselves in this way. So by the end, I want them to feel deeply connected to themselves, be able to access their intuition in a clear and supportive and intuitively discerning way, and to be able to support their own system with whatever is coming up, whether that might be pain or chronic symptoms or whatever it is. And then from that place, they're going to be so deeply connected to their inner knowing and to their system that they're likely already going to know the answer that they're seeking, and they're going to know how to connect with it. Uploads.
So you teach people to awaken their inner healer without requiring medical validation. So why is that idea so radical and yet so necessary?
Yeah, so I believe it's so necessary because often the medical system doesn't have the answers for us. I can't tell you how many times I've had a doctor tell me that science just hasn't caught up to the types of conditions that I'm living with and how they actually just they don't even have the information. And so it's it's not even safe most of the time for me to go to an ER. I have even avoided an ER when I'm close to anaphylaxis, and I don't recommend
Oh,
that per se,
no,
but
no.
in my situation, the ER has caused me so much distress and trauma and like a lack of physical safety that I have often throughout my journey had to avoid it in situations where I would typically never ever recommend somebody avoid it, right? So the
Absolutely.
reason that I feel like it's so necessary for people to awaken their own inner healer is for the sense of empowerment that can come with that, as
Hmm.
well as that being able to access that inner knowing within yourself of where and when do I truly have to access medical care, and where and when are they not going to have the answers for me, but I can find this a different way, right?
Sure. Sure.
So, because when I was bedridden, and I mean, even in the last few years, I was completely bedridden, unable to eat or speak, and I had a
Oof.
child under the age of 3. And
Oof.
I became dependent on a wheelchair. I was told by the medical system that I would need to use a wheelchair forever, that I was likely going to be close to bedbound or homebound for the rest of my life,
Oh
and
my
that
goodness.
medical science just had not caught up to where my body was and the conditions that I was living with to be able to help me. So I know that there are thousands and thousands of other people who are living in the same situations as me. And for example, I did find access to a pretty great internal medicine doctor who does address these conditions in a more safe and informed way than
Mhm.
any other medical doctor I have found. And now MSP, the government, that how they pay for the medical system, is changing their model of payment, and he's no longer going to be able to offer us the same care that he has been for the last few years that has helped me so much to get to where I am. And
Right.
so it just seems like even when we do find somebody like a needle in a haystack who might be able to help us,
Sure.
we can't rely on being able to have access to that forever, because there's all of these other systems in place that are
Sure.
doing their own thing that
Right.
might remove that access to care. And currently, there's like 6,000 of us who are about to lose our access to care, to quality and safe medical care. So that is a really big concern.
Oh
And
boy.
the reason,
Boy. You've heard the news down here, right?
yeah, yeah,
Oh.
it's not good. It's happening within the next month, and it is going to put thousands and thousands of patients in danger, in my opinion.
Mm.
That's my opinion. And so
Yeah.
that's why I think it's so important, though, to be able to awaken your own inner healer. And as for why is this such a radical idea? Because we have been taught that we have to rely on external sources for everything, and not to rely on our own inner knowing for almost
Sure.
anything. So I don't think that that should be a radical idea, whether it is or not. I don't really have an opinion on that, but that would be my answer there. And then the piece around not requiring medical validation, that's because almost every one of my blood tests was fine, right? So I
Right.
kept going to the doctor saying, I'm losing neurological function. I'm losing the ability to get out of bed every day. I only have one usable hour per day. And they would just say, well, everything's fine in your blood work, so it must be in your head. And it wasn't. And I was sent for psych evals. I was
Must
sent
be in your
for,
head.
and yeah, we don't have the answer. We don't have the science for this. So we're going to blame you instead. That's how it
Right.
felt.
And you pretty much covered what I'm going to ask you next. You've been both a practitioner and a patient. How does your lived experience, shape the way you hold space with your people now?
Like 100%. I hold space completely differently because of my lived experience. There is just this different level of understanding and embodiment in my practice because of what I have lived through. And
Mhm.
that's not to say that it's going to be like a perfect science for every person who walks in my door, right? But I have experienced enough trauma, enough dismissal, enough, you know, one of the biggest pieces I think is within both the medical system and the practitioners like me that I have come up against is people who don't know what they don't know. And
Yeah.
that's dangerous.
Yeah, sure.
So that is, in my opinion, one of the biggest risks is when somebody doesn't know what they don't know. It's okay to not know everything. I definitely don't know everything, and I'm not going to claim to. Even within my conditions, there can be variants, there can be different presentations that I may not have lived through, that I may not fully understand. But
Yeah.
when you think you know everything or you're not aware of what you don't know, then there's a lot of harm that can be done, in my opinion,
Sure.
on a
Sure.
lot of different
Sure.
layers.
Well, I tell you, before we start winding this thing down, you've got your own podcast, Coming Home to Ourselves. That's a very intentional title. Very intentional. I love that. What does coming home mean to you after everything you've survived?
Thank you. I do. So my podcast is Coming Home to Ourselves with Denise Elysa. And coming home to myself, to me, means being so fully embodied, being so fully connected to my body and to my sense of self and that self energy, that is what becomes my anchor and my guiding light. So it holds me and grounds me, but it also guides me forward and gives me the information that I need to make the decisions that I need to make when I need to make them. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what tells me what's right for me, what's not right for me, what to do next, when to cross the street because that person coming towards me is like maybe not a safe person, like when to make choices in a different way. And sometimes that's a really hard thing to do. As a recovering people pleaser, that's a really hard thing to do, right? So I like to use this example because I think the word embodiment and the idea of coming home to ourselves is a really challenging idea for people to understand when they haven't actually experienced it. It's more of a felt sense. So what the example I like to use is that when somebody is a really strong people pleaser, it is so uncomfortable to them to make somebody else uncomfortable. So they would rather keep this other person comfortable than to keep themselves safe or to keep themselves that to live with that discomfort of making
Yeah.
somebody else
Yeah.
uncomfortable. They can't bear that sensation of making the other person uncomfortable. So they end up making choices that are way outside of alignment with themselves that often put themselves in danger because they can't tolerate that discomfort. When somebody who lives that way has come home to themselves, they are now able to set boundaries, to say no, to do the things that are in alignment with who they truly are, even if it makes somebody else uncomfortable.
Sure.
And when they do that, it might still feel uncomfortable, but they
Mm-hmm.
know I am safe. I've made the right choice for myself here. I know that how I behaved is in alignment with who I truly am and what I need at this time, and that person's feelings around it are none of my business, are not my responsibility. So sometimes I like to use that analogy instead because it really is just this like felt sense of being anchored and connected to your body and to this like core sense of who you are.
Well, that totally makes sense. Listen, it's been a joy having you on the program and you sharing your story with us. Before we sign off here, have you got any words of wisdom for us? Anything?
I didn't prep for that question. Actually, I didn't prep for any of these questions, but I would say if there's something pulling at your heart at this time and you're not sure where it's going to lead you, how to get there, what it's going to involve, what fallout there might be, but you're just having this like tug at you to do something, just begin.
Just
Just
begin.
begin and just see where it leads. Give yourself permission to like fumble through it. Give yourself permission to figure it out as you go, but just take that step and just start. Just begin.
Take that step, even if you do step on a Lego.
Exactly.
Hey, you were talking about that came to mind. You were talking a little bit ago about grounding, just touching the earth and that kind of thing. I've mentioned this many times on my podcast. My co-host when we were doing the Wednesday night live program, my co-host Jim, he is an ocean swimmer, and that's how he grounds himself. He goes swimming in the
I
ocean
love
every
ocean
morning.
swimming.
He's an
Yeah.
ocean swimmer,
Yeah.
and miles
Love that.
long swims. And
Wow.
and I
Yeah.
he knows that I live in the woods. I live on a couple of acres of land out in the woods. and I have a lot of wildlife that lives out here, and I got a big garden and 14 feral cats. And one of the things I like to do,
Wow.
yeah, a lot of cats. Every morning, I almost just as the sun's coming up, I like to go out in the backyard, just walk around with my coffee barefoot, and I got these cats following me around. Cats are all around me. They're following me around. And I just walk out to the garden with my coffee. I'm not even going to do any gardening. I'm just walking out there, and that's how I ground. Every morning, I ground.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. There's so much value in connecting barefoot to the earth. And when I
Oh, yeah.
refer to grounding, I'm not necessarily referring to it as actually connecting to like the earth, like barefoot, but there's a
Right.
lot of different ways of grounding. So the
Right.
reason I mention that is because a lot of the people that I have worked with, or even myself at times, when you're bedridden, going outside and putting your bare feet on the earth is not an option. So there's a
Well, yeah,
lot of different ways to do that,
sure.
and that's the only reason I mention that, because I never want people to get this idea that they are limited, like, "Oh, I can't do that because I'm bedbound." Like, there's a lot of different ways to do things,
Sure.
and there's a lot of different adaptations and accommodations that can be put in place to help somebody get to where they're trying to go, even within the limitations that they're living with. But I do
Mhm.
love what you're sharing, just that bare feet on the earth. And when I lived in a one floor, like I lived in the bottom floor and my garden was out my front door, I used to do the same thing every morning. So bare feet, coffee in hand, and I'd just go walk the garden.
That's the best.
And it's beautiful because not only are you connecting then with nature and with your bare feet on the ground, but you're also connecting with that proprioception of how your
Yep.
feet are connecting to the earth. Because when we wear
Exactly.
shoes, we're disconnected from that, right?
Yep.
And the shoes are supporting us in a different way where we're not connecting with that same proprioceptive movement with our
Yep.
toes and our toes being able to splay. And so I love that, Tracy. I think that's a wonderful
Well,
daily
I told you,
practice.
I told you that I'm a retired nurse and basically semi-retired from everything else. So I live in Florida, so I rarely ever wear shoes
That's
unless I'm
wonderful. I
unless
love
I'm
it.
going unless I'm going to the store for something. Short pants, t-shirt, and
Yeah,
no shoes. That's me every day.
wonderful. That sounds pretty nice on this gray day. We're here in Vancouver, Canada, where it rains for several months of the year.
Well, several years ago, I lived in Costa Rica. I lived in Costa Rica for a couple of years right after I retired.
Wow.
And I was down there for a couple of years. And they only have two seasons, the wet season and the dry season. That's it. It's the same temperature all year round. It's like 70 degrees, but it's either wet or it's dry. That's
Wow.
it. That's it.
Wow. To be
That's a
honest,
fact.
I really like the rain, to be honest, but I miss the sun in the winter.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It's been a joy. We've been rambling on here. It's been a joy having you on the
Thank you,
program, and you're
Tracy.
welcome. You're welcome anytime. And I'm going to check out yours, and I'm going to put your link in the description here when we have this up on the YouTube channel, so everybody can go over there and see "Coming Home to Ourselves" with Denise Elysa.
Thank you so much.
See you next time. Well, that's a wrap for this episode of the Contrast Project Lounge podcast. Big thanks to our guests, and big thanks to you for tuning in. You can find us on all of the social media channels, wherever you are. If you like what you heard, drop us a line in the comment section below, like, share, and smash all the subscribe buttons. New episodes drop weekly. Until then, take care of yourself and take care of your people. Peace.